It's a movie about Norwegian scientists figure out a way to shrink people down to 5 inches in height as a way to offset climate change, and 6% of the global population decides to do it because they realize pretty quickly that at 5 inches in height you can actually consume much more. So you can have a 6,000 square foot house and 2 acres, the equivalent of, for the size of like a coffee table, and so people feel like they can get the lives that they can't quite have in the big world, while doing something good for the planet. I play a guy named Paul Safronic, who's a guy from Omaha. He's an occupational therapist. He works at Omaha Steaks. He kind of helps people with repetitive injuries, work-related injuries, and he's in-house at Omaha Steaks. And he's just a very good, conscientious guy. And he's married pretty early on in the script to Kristen Wiig plays my wife, and basically they can't quite make it. They can't quite have the life that they want in Omaha. And this idea of downsizing just starts to look more and more appealing to them, kind of after one thing after another kind of starts to convince them that maybe this is for them. Kristen is, I mean, she's incredible, and I did The Martian with her last year, and I remember Ridley Scott kind of thundering in and going, this she can do anything, and she really is. I mean, she's known obviously for her writing and her acting and these comedic performances, but she's just a really dynamic actress, and can kind of strike those nuanced notes with Audrey really beautifully, and you get a complete picture of who the character is, very quickly, because Kristen's able to kind of get those signals exactly right. It's got everything you could really want. I mean, it's got 3 cheesecake factories. It's got kind of all of the creature comforts. It's got, the biggest indoor ski facility, to scale, of course, in the world. It's Leisureland it's kind of pitched as this kind of heaven on earth where you can live a carefree life and kind of liberate yourself from the grind of the working class life in the big world. Christoph is one of the best actors to ever live. He's just brilliant, and he's so agile. He can just go turn on a dime and take it in any direction, and that's the fun, is the unpredictability of Dushan and what he's going to do next and what he's going to say, but also the joy with which he lives life and wants everybody around him to have that too. And it's just a really great role for a great actor. Ngoc Lan Tran is a Vietnamese political dissident who I see on the news when I first arrive in Leisureland. And, the downsizing is becoming a little controversial. I mean, the Israelis are downsizing the Palestinians. Some countries are downsizing their political dissidents against their will. And there's this story of this TV box that arrived in Leisureland with some holes punched in it, with 20 Vietnamese political dissidents who had been downsized against their will, and they hadn't survived the journey. 19 of them hadn't, and all but this one, who is Hong Chau's character, Ngoc Lan Tran, and she loses her leg, but she survives. There's never been a bad performance in an Alexander Payne movie. There just hasn't. And on the contrary, there have been some pretty exceptional performances. And every actor, when you look at that as an actor, you go, there's something, that's not a coincidence. Um, Working with him, I understand now a lot better. I mean, I didn't the precision with which everything is done, and the kind of painstaking lengths he goes to to tinker with every little thing in his frame until he's got it exactly as he wants it. My brother, who's an artist, came to watch him film one day, and he said, it's like every frame is an Edward Hopper painting. You know, it really has that kind of incredible attention to detail, and and yet looks kind of thrown away. It looks kind of like, oh, it's kind of random, but there's absolutely nothing random happening, and it's an unbelievably high level of direction to be able to have things look completely tossed off and yet have them be exactly as you want them to be. Hong's incredible. Hong is my biggest concern going into this was who are we going to get to play that role. It is absolutely critical. It's the whole thing hinged on that role, and you know, we knew we had to find somebody, um, and when Alexander sent me her screen test, I was like, this movie's going to be great. She's just awesome. Alexander came to my office and when he first told me the concept, I wasn't sure if I didn't know him really. So I didn't know if he was serious that this was what we were actually gonna do. I met him once and only once in 1999. It was a party at Sherry Lansing's house for some Paramount movies. I think I had The Talented Mr. Ripley and he had Election, and it was during Oscar season, and she had a big party at her house for kind of the Paramount family, you know, and I saw him. I passed by him, and I knew who he was. I'd seen his picture, and I stopped him and I just said, I'm a huge fan of your work, and I really hope we can work together someday. And 16 years later, I he I got a call that he wanted to meet, and he came to my office and he said, actually, we've met before. And I said, we met once in Sherry Lansing's backyard. And he said, do you remember what you said to me? I said, I really want to work with you someday. And he said, well, I've got the project. I think it's definitely the right time. I think it would have been the right time 10 years ago. I mean, I think it speaks to the world we're living in. It speaks to all these things that have kind of defined this last generation of American life. And you know, the great thing about satire is it's not all literal, so you're not getting preached to. Like, this movie's really funny, but you can say more with a movie like that. And you know, every movie I've seen of his, you know, which is all of them, I've always left it. You know, they're profound without being preachy or without being arrogant. There's a profundity to them that I really admire, and a simplicity to them too. And so to be able to do something like this, which is really out of the box and unlike anything I've ever seen, you know, the fact that we got that Paramount agreed to, you know, finance this. It's not you know, a typical movie, and I say that with great pride. Jason is, again, like Kristen. He's somebody who's super versatile. So he's known for his comedy, and should be, like she should be, because they're so funny. Um, but his character in this is funny, but just incredibly dark.